Hey, peace and power, family. What up, what up, what up? I am live. I am live. I am live. Welcome to the Quotes to Live By, telling our own story series. Little sneak peek. We are going to be talking today with one of the co-hosts from our 8-week interactive series where we are unpacking the Black Woman Anthology, baby, edited by Tony Kate Bombard. And it's been so good so far. We only had one session and, it was on basically finding your own voice and identity, and folks were just talking about their experience growing up as a Black woman in America and beyond, and the shifts that are necessary when we move outside of America, and just we was getting into it. Okay, so today we are going to be having a lovely, lovely, lovely conversation with Dr. Brendane Tynes. Okay, she will be co-hosting our third session again on intimacy, the body, and relationships. So we are going to wait for her to hop in with us. Oh, or maybe I'm supposed to invite to join. Hey, welcome, welcome. I wish I could play some music, but I just be hating. Dang. Perfect. All right. We are about to. Let me see if I can do that one more time. Oh, no, I said that right. Hey. I'm trying to figure out this live thing, y'all. Y'all know I don't be up here often. Oh, it's not letting you join. Let me cancel. But again. What up? What up? Hey, there we go.
Yes, finally, finally, finally,
I should be hating.
as always.
Right. How you doing today?
Today's a lower energy Wednesday for
Yeah.
me, but I'm doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, that's real. Same. I did a long trip last week, so these last 3 days have literally just been grounding back into my space, back into a normal routine. So,
Ooh, where'd you
taking it
go?
slow. I was
Wait,
in
where'd you?
Denver, honey,
Not
having a good
Colorado.
old time too. I actually spoke at the National Network for Abortion Funds Summit. I did a workshop on storytelling as a tool for healing in action, and then another one on releasing shame and stigma around getting an abortion for youth through care.
Mm.
So it was so good. I met so many dope people. I had a good time, child. It was good.
Yes, I'm glad you had a good
So
time. I
yeah.
am an abortion haver, so I'm always happy to hear that folks are spreading the good word, which is that
Okay.
children are a choice. And so, yeah, children are a
That
choice.
part. Okay. And that is like really on topic with what we're talking about today. So I'm so excited to get kicked off. Do you want to tell the people a little bit about you before we start
Yes.
answering and talking about questions?
Yes, of course. So, hello, I'm Brendan. I am a scholar, a storyteller. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, always repping the 803. And yeah, I'm a Black feminist, queer scholar. I am so excited to be on here with you today to talk about like the Black woman the anthology. I have it right here in front of me because
Okay. And you got
I'm
the
gonna
other
come
look,
to
we
it.
got both covers. Okay,
Yes.
look
Oh,
at
I'm
that.
trying to find they had the first edition of this for sale at a bookshop in New York that I went to one time, and I was just like, oh, I need to save up so I
I
can
was
buy
about to
it. It was
say,
like
I
two
know
hundred
it costs
dollars.
buku money.
Yes, it was like $200. So yeah, I'm just so excited for tonight, and thank you for the invitation to go live. You look beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm just, excited to get into this conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on and also being a part of the series. I was telling you earlier around how we did something similar early in the year, and I tried to hold it down by myself. And let me tell y'all, everybody, community. lean on your people. Okay, lean
The
on your
only way we're
people.
gonna
We
make it
are
through.
resources for each other.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. That's the only
you
way we're
don't
gonna
have to
make
do
it
it
through.
alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yes, I'm super, super grateful. But again, I think that I want to start with us talking about why this book and why right now, right? Because I know why I wanted to talk about the book, but I want to know, yeah, like what are you thinking about? Why this book? Why do you feel like this is an important book to talk about right now?
Yes. So in the 1960s, right, this is a moment where Black folks and non-Black people are trying to understand who the fuck they are and why they are and what they're doing. And
Okay.
this collection of essays, this collection of essays and poems of writing by Black women was a part of Black women reasserting and redefining themselves at that time. There were so many narratives about who Black women were, what we were capable of, right? The things that we couldn't do, right? Which was raise a good child, right? Or have a good family, right? And the things that we could do, which was raise white people kids or clean their
Mhm.
houses. And so, what I find transformative about this work, then, right, is that Toni Cade Bambara brings together Black women who are queer, Black women who are straight, Black women who are childless, Black women who are mothers, to have a conversation about what or who is the Black woman, right? And really exemplifying or explaining that category for us. And so, today, right? We are here at another moment in 2025 where folks are trying to figure out who the fuck Black people are,
Okay.
right? They're trying to understand who we are, right? And they're trying to understand, right, how to relate to us. Now that the inevitable end of the world that was capitalism and anti-Blackness and white supremacy has come, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the role of the Black woman in this
Yeah.
space? What is the role of the Black person? Or even I would say the Black femme person now. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think you're so apt to come back to this book because as I'm like revisiting it to prepare for our time together, I'm like, there's so many passages here where you could literally say this today and the shit would still apply.
Okay.
All right, we still trying to figure out who and what Black women are and what they mean to the world. And that's ridiculous. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's ridiculous, but it also is like a stark smack in the face of the reality that we are in and that we have been experiencing like throughout the years since the 70s, right? Like not much
Mhm.
has changed, and I don't think that we sit down and we face that reality on a regular basis, right? I think a lot of times we think that because of what we are seeing, what's being projected, what's being like taught to us, we think we know, right? And even just looking around us, right? Looking in our environment, we think this is what it means and this is what it's like.
Mhm.
When it's like
Mhm.
black is the spectrum. Okay, the black experience is a spectrum. So yes, we do have things that are very similar and that happen to us just because we are black or predominantly because we are black, right? But the black person is a spectrum. And it was a article I was reading on the issue of roles that Tony wrote, right? About how we are always pitting ourselves against each other, right?
Mhm.
And trying to be like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, you supposed to be doing this, I'm mad you're not doing this, I'm mad you're not doing that, right? Go, stay in your place, to both sides, like coming from both the man and the woman, right? Instead of being like, oh, hey, we actually aren't getting our needs met collectively, right? On the people that are supposed to be providing our needs, or the society that is supposed to be making sure that we can live safely and sustainably here, right? And I think that that is really one of the big reasons that made me want to come back and use this book as a tool, because I'm like, they're having the real conversations, or at least they're naming the things, right? So we don't have it as a conversation because there's no black men in the book, right? But
Mhm.
they are naming like, this is our reality, this is what we are really experiencing, this is what we are really going through, and let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about it. I put it all out on the table. Let's talk about it. And I think that that's really what called me to this book, was like, I want to talk about it. Like, I want to talk about why we are still in the same place, right? 55 years later. Like, somebody
Why?
somebody talk about it. Somebody
Ex-
tell me.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we can all look to, right? And understand is why we're in the same places. I think that folks still believe in the false power of white supremacy, right? Folks still believe in the false power of patriarchy, right?
Okay.
They want to, and I speak from my own experience, my interactions with people who believe that women like me need to be, doing certain things. In the home, right? It's always this coming from a place of brokenness and a place of fear, coming
Mm,
from a place of, well, if you are powerful, if you are doing this thing, if you know who you are, if you're able to talk your talk and walk your walk, if you love your body, then what does that say about me and my hatred for mine? What does
mm,
it say about my fear that I am nothing because someone has told me that I am? And I kind of believe that because I don't have
mhm.
this or this or that. And I think there's like so many essays and stories in this book that point to that, right? They point to the very real, grounded experiences of Black women just walking down the street, Black women having conversations with family members where their family members are constantly kind of speaking from a place of anger or fear, or
Yeah,
they're using their Black woman, uh, family member, sister, or just the stranger as a measurement for who they are.
yeah,
And that, and I think we as like Black women, especially those of us who occupy that social category, have to consider the truth. The truth
hmm,
that is like we must be powerful, right? If everyone is using us as a measuring stick for who they are and what their worth
okay.
is, right? If you can only be worthy because I am subjugated, then what does that really say
Hmm,
about you, right? Like what does
hmm.
that really say about the source of yourself and your worthiness? And I absolutely agree with you that one of the biggest contributions of this work is that it feels like it's a round table
Yes.
of Black women writers and thinkers coming together to say, here's my experience, here's
Hmm.
yours. And there's not that invalidation of experience that you
Yes.
were also speaking to as well, which I'm like, I know that we need more works like this in the world.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and again, that's exactly why I think that I wanted to include the digital anthology as a part of the Quotes to Live By series that we're doing, because I'm like, we have stories to tell. Like, we also have experiences that we want affirmed and that we want validated, and by nothing but us writing it. Like, because I said this is what happened, because this is what I'm saying and this is what I'm sharing. It is truth, and we are holding it as that, and we are putting it out as that. And I think that another big reason why I wanted to do the digital anthology was, again, to wake it up around how we
Mm,
are navigating the same issues, right? How people have talked about this and talked about how we can think about it and how we can have the conversations and how we can hold space for the nuance that is, right? Because a lot of, again, going back to what I was naming earlier, we are all experiencing a lot of the same things. Like, it doesn't,
mhm.
regardless of gender expression. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is super important for us to recognize that, like, we are not going to get the liberation that we are looking for if we keep pitting ourselves against each other or falling into that pressure to pit ourselves against each other, right? um and I wanted to move into the next question around, like, why do you think it's important for us to talk about intimacy, relationships, and the body when we're talking about, like, what we need to do right now in the role of Black women in the world and society right now?
Yes. And so I think that it's important for us to think about intimacy for two reasons mainly. So one of them being that for a lot of folks, intimacy is directly connected to, sex, right? This kind of physical closeness that can happen with one or more people, depending on how you roll, sometimes with yourself, depending on how you roll, right?
Mhm.
Intimacy. But the Black woman, like as a subject, right? As someone who's written about, who's thought about in literature, both by Black people and non-Black people, right? Often occupies this oh my gosh, what is the word? the kind of underbelly of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
She's the deviant, right? She's the person
Mm-hmm.
with whom intimacy is impossible because she spreads herself out among everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of stereotype around Black women make having conversations about how we actually really emotionally relate to ourselves and to each other nearly impossible. And so, so many Black women theorists like Hortense Spillers, and I would even say like Saidiya Hartman in some ways, when we talk about the figure or the subject of the Black woman, they talk about this opaqueness about her, right? They
Mm-hmm.
talk about the ways that we kind of have to squint our eyes and turn our
Yeah.
heads and tip our ears in order to really see and hear what is going on and happening with the
Yeah.
Black woman. And so it's important for us to think about intimacy in what ways can we defy or even accept, right, our deviant nature? Because who
Yeah.
wants to be normal in all of this mess, right? Who wants to
Okay.
be
It was
normal,
considered
right?
normal.
Right.
Right.
What's considered normal? Like who wants to be that if that is defined in opposition to who we are, right?
Yeah.
But also how do we expand intimacy, particularly through our experiences as Black women, where we've had to find closeness with the self and others in
Mm-hmm.
dry places, in
Yeah.
hard places, in places like how do you find intimacy? I think about it like how do you find intimacy and self and sense of self and body in the hold of a ship where you
Yeah.
are stacked on top of others and treated as objects, as cargo,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things to merely be fed or thrown aboard, right? How do
Yeah.
you still find that intimacy and that sense of self and that sense of your own body? That is something that is unique to those of us who are descended from enslaved people, right?
Right.
And so it's so important for us to do the work of redefining that intimacy, of finding ourselves and finding our body, because I think that's essential to, as you say, transforming how we relate to each other here and now,
Yeah.
but also helping us reconnect to our ancestors and their own
Mm-hmm.
battles, and their own journeys of definition, of self definition.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that is so important. And I'm like, what's coming up for me right now is around the it's talked about a lot in the book around how capitalism and Christianity came into African countries, right? And shifted the way they interacted and engaged with each other. So where before it was very egalitarian, very everybody on the same level, we're all helping each other out. Where, this is a collective, it's a communal experience. We moved into this idea around property as a form of like hierarchy, right?
Mhm.
And then once you move into that, when you don't have property, that only other place of exercising that hierarchy is in the relationship, right? And then
Mhm.
now the there somebody has to be higher and somebody has to be lower, right? And thinking about uh freedom as in like how can I take my agency back, right? How
Mhm.
can I be self-determinant? How can I make sure that I have autonomy over my experiences and what happens to me, my body, and in my relationships? You know what I'm saying? I think it's so important that we talk about these things because we are still right now consistently being inundated with propaganda around, right,
Mhm.
this idea that we are the people, that we are naturally, right, like this. Like this is a natural way of being when it's really a socialized way of being, right? Meaning that we have the power to change it. So yeah, I think it is super, super, super important for us to have these conversations and to be reading things like this that are calling it out. Like, hey, it actually don't got to be like this. And there are examples. And something I want to point out, we have way more examples now than we did in the 70s, right? We have way more access to, ideas of what things could be like, how we could relate to each other, how our systems could be set up, right, to support everybody and how they want to live their lives, right? When I think about Cuba, I think about they have a tax system, right, around family where you know how we have a child care credit here. In
Mhm.
Cuba, they got an elder, a pet, a partner, like you get all the credits for any type of way your family show up. And when I seen that pep one, I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah,
Not bring
bring
that one
that
over
over here.
here. Okay.
Okay. I'm like, y'all thinking, right? Y'all on the right track. But just thinking about that's something that we would even never consider here, right? In the terms of what it means to be in relationship, to have a family, to be in community, or how to relate, right, to one another or to relate to the world around us, right? Um, so yeah, that's what I was thinking about, y'all.
Yeah, and I think you said so many like great things. I'm like over here trying to jot them down as you talk, but um the connection between right this intimacy, property,
Mm,
autonomy, and ownership. And
yeah,
so ownership as we know and understand it and maybe dis slash embody it today, right? As this product of settler colonialism, right? This idea that if you own a person, a place, or a thing, right, that makes you supreme, right? The ability to dominate, that is what should, heaven should bestow upon you so many blessings because you're able to
right.
do that. And I really like though how you distinguish autonomy from that. Because I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people think of autonomy as simply, I own myself,
Yeah,
right? And I think a lot about community building and world building and through abolition, right? And through anarchy, because I'm an anarchist. And so I think about like what if we let go of this idea of autonomy as this being like ownership of self, right? If
yeah,
we actually disentangle ownership from our understandings of what it means to be self-determined, what would
hmm,
that allow us to do when it comes to defining, like as you speak to family, right? If being an autonomous self means that I don't own a husband or I don't own a wife or I don't own a child, right? What does
hmm,
that open up for me as far as community and family?
yeah,
And as you spoke to, right, there are definitely ancestral and elder and present examples from our people of what's possible.
yeah.
Um, and I hate to be that girl, but I'm always like, there will never be a European theorist that will
Okay,
offer. There will never be a European theorist, okay? I mean, we love, let me say that not we, because I'm not in that. Y'all can love Marx for what he did and what he said,
okay,
but it's not like right, Marxism has the grand total capacity to hold what Black people need. And
yeah,
I think as we move politically, right, as we move through this world politically, we have to start thinking with more nuance and more like nimbleness, if you pointed out, right,
yeah,
around what these categories mean for our moves and for ourselves. Like, what if we decided we weren't going to let the European theorists define who we are and how we choose to relate to each other?
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's so important to name because I've been doing the People Forum Socialist Summer School, and they are so good. Like they really bring in a bunch of different people who have different ways of talking about things. It keeps you interested, right? And I've gotten a
Mhm.
lot from it. And one of the things that they were talking about recently was about why Reconstruction didn't last, right? So after slavery ended and we had all these free slaves, right? Black folks had some power, right?
Mhm.
They was like, we need to figure out how to do the things. Like we need the cars, we need the houses, we need the education, we need the healthcare, we need the jobs, we need everything that we didn't have before, right? And they were politically active. Black folks were showing up to the meetings, showing up to the policy making meetings. They were having organizations, they were doing political education in churches and schools. Like they
Mhm.
were requiring that they get free education for everybody, right? They was even looking out for other folks, right? So, and then of course, all of this crumbled, right? Because when we're thinking about labor specifically, the black folk and the white folk couldn't get together, right? They couldn't get together because it's like, oh no, we have this big battle. We have this, oh, this is my, you know, this is mine and I'm better because I have this thing, or I can get this
Mhm.
job and you can't get this job because it's an only white job, right? And I think that we just are still kind of stuck, right? We are still kind of stuck in that still mindset around like you have to think this type of way, or you have to show up this type of way, or I have this type of role, right? Or I know this much about Marxism or whatever. And that is this like keeping us divided, right? On the side where we are all like, this something needs to change, right? Something has to be different. And I think a big part of what is also emphasized in these courses, the summer school courses, is that we have to adapt to right now, to what we
Mhm.
are experiencing right now. What Marx and them and Lenin and all of them was doing, yes, that is good information, that is good data, but we have to use what is going on with us right now, our lived experiences right now, the policies and the things that are in place right now to figure out what our revolution will look like. Right, we will not be able to use a floor plan to build our houses, right? It's just not going to work. And I think a lot of folks are reading and like learning this stuff and getting really excited and being like, we can do this. They did it, da 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 da. And I'm like, baby, we got different circumstances,
Different
different
circumstances.
skills, different tool sets. Okay. We are up
Mhm.
against different battles, right? And I think
Mhm.
a big part of that battle is even in progressive and movement spaces is recognizing that the Black woman, and if we want to go even deeper than the Black woman, we can talk about the poor, disabled, indigenous children, right? Right? We can go even deeper, right? Like the people who are most impacted should be the leaders, should be the people making the decisions and making the policies. And if not, and not the only, right? I think a lot of folks, everybody needs to be at the table because, again, we're all experiencing, yes, queer and trans, wake it up, Yoli, that these are the folks who are most impacted and who need to be at the table making the decisions. And if we don't listen to them, listen to their expertise, listen to their stories about their experience, listen to the needs that they are naming that need to be met, we aren't going to actually reach the world, you know, the utopia, the revolutionary world, right, that we want to experience. And that brings me in to our last question, which is like, how do you feel like the work is two part? So the first part is, how do you feel like what you're doing, right, and the different things that you're seeing in the world um are moving us in the right direction, right? And then specifically the Quotes to Live By series. Like, how do you feel like us talking about this book, having these conversations with each other, putting out our own literature from our own perspective is adding to that possibility for liberation? So the first part is
Mhm.
around like your work specifically and what you're seeing in your work specifically. And then thinking about like the Quotes to Live By series and how that is, uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. And so my who how do I answer this in a way that will make the least amount of people upset? But whatever.
No, girl, make us mad. We need to be mad. It's okay to be mad. We
I
supposed to
know,
be
you're the
mad. Do you see what's going
that
on in DC? We should be
like,
pissed.
I mean, oh
Okay, let
no,
me stop.
not about that. I think I
Yeah.
just let me say what I need to say, and maybe I'll backtrack then and think about it. But yeah, so what we're doing, right, to move in the right direction. I think there's a misconception that all of us are supposed to be on a train headed to somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by make them mad is there are some people who look like us, right? There are some people who talk like us. There's some people who
Okay.
got locks like I got. There's some people who got, brown skin like I got, who gonna miss the train. Right. And
Yeah.
but that is like, for me as someone who has African and Black indigenous spiritual practices, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see that as maybe perhaps, right? That is in
Yeah.
alignment with whatever their higher self, their Ori, whatever they got
Okay.
going on with them, right?
Yes.
And so it's not the work that I do, the work that we do at Black Love Free, the work that I do just locally on the ground with Black women, Black queer and trans people who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence, right? My work is not to evangelize. My work is not
Yeah.
to say, okay, you are a non-believer in your liberation and your freedom. Let me come knock on your door and hand you a pamphlet and hand you some black feminist texts and theory and argue you down about this, that, and the third so that you can join us on this train. My job is to say, hey, I see that you are suffering. Here is the compassion I have for you, the learning I have for you. There is a way forward. The train is leaving at 3 p.m. Are you going to get on or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many of us approach the work that we do, our political work, right, as one of evangelism, right? We
Yeah.
haven't gotten rid, we all talk about the cop in our heads and our hearts, but we ain't got rid of the preacher in our heads and our hearts either. And I think so many of us think that moving from preaching, the good gospel of Jesus Christ, right, to the good gospel of liberation, not knowing that moving with those same attitudes in that same exclusionary way, right, is what actually continues to create those hierarchies and those differences that you see. And so
Yeah.
at Black Love Free, right, we are talking about what does it mean to really connect with ourselves, to ground ourselves in the Black feminist principles, right, where Black feminists are always talking about look inside before you start speaking out what's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's whiteness, that's white supremacy, that's the European way of moving through the world, right? The Europeans say look outside so we could change within.
Yeah.
The Europeans say, you're not like us, so we got to change you so that we can be happy. And
Mm-hmm.
it is truly a Black feminist orientation to the world to look inside and say, am I in alignment with myself and with my own spirit before I move forward and build with that ancestral and present power that I have, the world that I want to see?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the work that we do at Black Love Free. All right, so we call it spiritual political work.
Yeah.
It's deep self-knowledge and it's knowledge of how to build community from that space so that we
Mm-hmm.
were not always approaching our movement work from a place of brokenness and a place of woundedness.
Yeah.
And we've had conversations about that. My experience for sure in the movement has been
Mm-hmm.
one of repeated violence, right? And so that's what's led me to the space I am here and now. As far as the digital anthology and the work that I see that moving, we have so many folks who are involved who come from different walks of life who lay
Mm-hmm.
claim to blackness, or rather blackness lays claim to us. And and
Wake
we
it up.
can talk about like blackness lays claim to us. And we are able to articulate our experiences and articulate what it means to be present in this world and be able to imagine and build and love and organize for a new one.
Mm-hmm.
That is how I see it. My contribution to this is like really thinking about, like, what does it mean to see myself as myself,
Yeah.
without the refraction of oppression,
Mm-hmm.
and what how can that empower us to move forward? But I'm also just like I'm in awe of the work that you're doing to pull us all together. The clarity, the vision, the thoughtfulness, and also just the ways that you are building upon the layers of your experience, the layers of your knowledge, the layers of your wisdom. And it's just truly an honor to join you in that project and be a part of that community. So. Yeah, that's my little spiel. I probably forgot to say something, but
No, you said it
that's what I
all, and
got.
then you hyped me up. You got me over here feeling sensitive. But no,
It's
I
okay.
really
It's still
appreciate
Leo
it.
season, so it's still
Right.
Leo
Okay,
season.
wake it up. Wake it up. Okay. But no, I think it's super serious around the reality that that is the whole point, right? I really, really want us to dream together, but I also want us to face reality.
Hmm.
Right. I want us to also be able to go back and get it. Ain't that what Sanko for me? I want us to be able to go back and get it because we are living in the same world. right? It is cyclical, and what the experiences that we are having are cyclical. And I'm like, we don't have to live like this no more, okay? Like, we can experience something different. We can have something different. So let's get grounded in our reality, right? Let's look and see what was happening before and like really compare and contrast, like, what is different? Right? There are a lot, we have technology, we have a lot of access and a lot of power in our ability to connect even in this way. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But it, like, what is all that power if we are still having that, if our soil is terrible, right? Well, what if we ain't got nothing that we really rooted in and our seeds are bad and we growing these trees that ain't bearing no good fruit we can't eat, right? Then what are we doing? What are we
Well,
doing? But leaning into what they want for us, which is destruction, right? They want us to disappear. They want us to be so overwhelmed that we actually can't make any meaningful impact to in our own lives or in the lives of somebody else, right? So I think that that is really my hope and dream for the Quotes to Live By series, regardless of what we're taught, which text we're using, right? Is for us to be able to ground in reality and then really dream about what's possible, knowing what we know, because we know a lot. We know so much. And again, we have so much access to information, and that we have so many folks who left us tools. They
mm,
left us tips. They left us
mm,
guides. They left us instructions. They left us real time stories about what they experienced. They also left us imagination. Octavia Butler. Okay, let me tell
mm.
you, I started reading Parables of the Sower in once the pandemic hit. So it's like March, April of the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, I got time to read. And baby, I was about depressed. Okay, of course, my love. But yes, I was like, toe up because I'm like, this is real. I'm like, girl, this is scary. Like what? And I wanted to finish it before the first day in the book, which is like July 20th, 2025 or 2024 or something like that.
Yeah, I think
And
it
I
was
was like,
last year.
okay. So I was like, no, I'm going to finish, but I couldn't. I picked it up in 2020, but I could not finish it until July of 2024 because I'm like, bro, if we don't get our shit, and this was in what, in the 80s? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
uh,
And Prophetess Butler was a sign. People want to debate. They had this
right.
debate online about Black Girl Magic, and Octavia Butler somehow was like, "How I get in it?" But um, but one of the things that she talks about is that she was like, "I didn't have to do no predictive, no, no, no. Oh, let me see what the future's gonna be, baby." She said, "I looked around." Okay, I looked around. I put my feet on the ground and I looked around. And I said, "Oh, if we keep going down this road, this is where we're going to be." And
Mm-hmm.
that groundedness that you speak of, that I think so many people, especially now, because of the convenience of modern technology, because of all the things that we have, right? It is
Yeah.
so much easier to set your roots down in something or somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than right here where you are. But how else are you going to escape slavery if you don't know what ground you're standing upon?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know how to get from point A to point B from where you at, how are you going to liberate yourself and liberate
Mm-hmm.
others? And so I think that it's so essential, it's so critical, as you talked about, to be grounded and to speak from a grounded place in who we are and what we experience.
Yeah.
Because I think too, it's so easy, especially in Black feminist spaces that are filled with scholars like me. I am not
Yeah.
gonna deny it, right? It's
Same.
so easy for us in the academia to be caught in the imagination, to be caught
Mm-hmm.
in the fictive, to be caught in the, well, this is what I want. My dream world is
Mm-hmm. With the
my
visual.
big closet full of Birkins and my
Okay.
this and that, or my dream world is every Black girl gets to, wear a dress and go see Hidden Figures at the movie, or whatever, like whatever the
Yeah.
imaginations people have, right? But the reason why they might move or operate or move forward in a white supremacist world is because white supremacy actually appreciates and needs us to be ungrounded. It
Mm-hmm.
needs us to be wrapped up in its it's sorcery, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
And so a connection to ourselves and to that kind of liberatory imagination that you're talking about requires, right, our feet to be on the ground. And you're right, Mama Kim, like we can't be free if we haven't figured out what slavery really looks like. And if I had to say this to myself, like, girl, you busting your ass at work to make how much more than your ancestors per hour? Like, let's be real. Like, I'm
Yeah.
working on I'm and I will never work as hard as they have because of the
Yeah.
sacrifices and the work that they've done, right? I won't have to
Exactly.
experience
Yes.
that kind of labor. But
Mm-hmm.
to know that I'm still experiencing a certain level of physical, mental, emotional stress and strain,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I know my ancestors want me to be free from.
Yeah.
That groundedness and that return to self is what keeps me, I think, in the midst of that. So yeah, you have my mind running. So I'm like, let me, it's like I'm running, but this is so like, I think this is what is so exciting about coming together in community is
Mm-hmm.
also it helps with the loneliness that I think is essential to that, what you're talking about, that
Mm-hmm.
isolation and that loneliness that keeps us entrapped in these cycles as well.
Yeah, and I think that's also a big part of it around like the community aspect, right? So I did something as a part of the group is like buddies, right? Which is not something that we normally do when we do like these type workshops. You show up to the workshop, you do do the session, you go off, you come back for the next one, right? But I really
Mhm.
wanted to integrate something like buddies into the workshop series because I'm like, I want us to talk to each other. I want you to actually be friends with the people in the group. And if you're not friends, at least have somebody who you like, hey, I wrote this thing or I'm thinking about this thing. Can we talk about it? Do you have space? Can you hold space for me and my work? Right. And let us at least have that. Right. Because that was something that carried them. And we know about the sister, or maybe everybody doesn't, but the sisterhood was a group of Black women, some of our favorite Black writers coming together and just writing together, writing and critiquing each other, sharing their work, uplifting each other, affirming each other, giving some critical feedback if some things were questionable and needed to be unpacked, right? But that was how they were coming together and writing some of our favorite works, right? With the support of each other. So I definitely want us still to have space. And with that, I will plug we do meet on Mondays at 7 o'clock on Zoom to get our right on in community. It's been about 3 or 4 of us, and we have a little key at the end. And
Cool.
talk right, and but a part of it is like you also have to start making space for that
Mhm.
creativity. A big part of what a lot of us mentioned in that first session was like we are writers, we are creatives, but in the midst of the despair and the chaos and the whatever else the hell is going on and trying to find security in this world, we actually don't have time to pour into our creativity in a way that nurtures us and that fills us up, right? So having a designated space where it's like, no, for these 2 hours every other week, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to talk my shit, I'm going to create something, I'm going to really dedicate this time was something that people were longing for, right? And I think that that is also a reason why this space is adding to the possibility for liberation for us because it's giving us that space to actually be in practice, right? Which is so important. And I am someone who believes that every single thing that we do in life is practice. So are you practicing for liberation or are you practicing for oppression? Like, well, I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in our, because that's real, and I think that's something that we have to, again, pointing back to that kind of academic imaginary space where it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that one day I'm going to be able to click my heels and whatever people be talking
yeah,
about, I don't even know, right? But it's like, in order for us to get to that utopia, right, you have to
mhm,
build it in. You have to rehearse, right?
yeah,
So in our last workshop that we did, we talked about what it means to rehearse resistance. Right? What does it mean to
mhm,
look at every aspect of your life and think about, okay, if I say my values are love, care, this, and the third, am I practicing that in each and every space that I'm in? And if there's
yeah,
a space where it's impossible for me to practice these values, right, then that means that that's a space where I'm experiencing oppression.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I need to be able to liberate myself from that, right? If there's a relationship where I can't practice my values, that means that I'm being oppressed. And I need to figure out how to liberate myself from that, which is what our next set of workshops will be about, right? Thinking about
Mm-hmm.
what we're calling like micro practices of liberation and resistance, right? And
Love that.
so thinking about, right, like how do we take responsibility for our freedom? And not just
Mm-hmm.
in the way that everyone talks about, which is martyrdom, right? Which is, are you willing to put your life on the line? Are you willing to die for your
This is
liberation?
time for
Which,
dying, baby.
right, like, am I going to kill myself? Am I going to do my oppressor's work for them? Right? By killing myself, right?
So,
If anybody should pay for their lives for oppression, it should be the oppressor. So I don't, I right. And so it's like I think having an understanding of what is sacrifice in the movement, especially during like Black August, right, where we have people who are
mm-hmm.
literally imprisoned and incarcerated as their sacrifice to the movement, to our liberation, right?
Yeah,
How are we going to, in a communal space, in our own personal space, in an interpersonal space, right, take those practices of, I think, being creative for me is one of the ways that I practice my despair.
yeah,
And you mentioned folks being in despair, and it makes me think about what Joy James writes in Revolutionary Love, in Search of Revolutionary Love, where she talks about despair is actually being the more kind and more appropriate response to what's
mm-hmm.
happening. So
Mm-hmm.
folks, a lot of folks in abolitionist spaces and movement spaces turn to hope, right?
Yeah,
They turn to hope and they say, well, we just got to believe that one day it'll be better. And a lot of times that hope looks like reinvesting our time and our energy, our spirits into these systems that do not allow us to live by our values,
yeah,
right? That
yeah,
that tell us that we cannot be ourselves in order to exercise power in them. And
right.
so, what if we embrace despair, which is to say, okay, actually, I find no hope in you.
Mm-hmm.
There is no change in you. There is no hope in you.
Yeah,
And accept that, right? And accept that despair and say, okay, well, if I can't have hope in whoever is president, then that means, woo, I can move, I can use that energy and that spiritual force of my hope in my creative practice. If I
yeah,
can't find hope in that white person down the street, I can't hope that they'll be better to me. Maybe I need to move that hope to building communities among people who love the way I do. If I can't find hope in the school that I'm at, because they want to continue to pour money into genocidal forces around the world. Well, maybe that hope needs to go
mm-hmm.
towards whatever work I'm going to do with the degree I may or may not get from this institution, right?
Yeah,
And I think if we start really believing in our power to transmute and transform, right, we would approach even negative things like despair differently.
yeah,
But yeah, and like that despair, what despair does for me is it turns me to my creative practice. When I ain't got nothing left for
mm-hmm.
nobody else, I can cry it out and find a page.
Yeah,
And that's where I make myself again. And
mm-hmm.
I've been having to do a lot of that lately in my grief work. So yeah, I think I don't know. I don't want to be the despair preacher girl, but I don't know. I might have to just be like, yeah, girl, take that despair, girl. It's useful. It's
Right,
useful. Them
right.
tears
It's
is
a
useful.
tool. It's a
It's just not
tool.
gonna work. It's not gonna work for the people you wanted to work for. Mm-mm.
Yes,
Mm-mm. It's
yeah.
not. And
No,
yeah,
for
Mama
sure.
Kim, I see you saying finding hope in oppressive spaces won't make them loyal to us anyway, even if we master it. I mean, the Democratic Party. Hello, are
I
black
see
are like black women not the masters of the Democratic Party?
that
Okay,
92%.
I'm not. I'm not even gonna go there with you, D. With the 92, we're not even gonna do that. We're not even gonna do that. We just gonna.
You right. You right.
No,
No,
we
you
gonna
right.
do
But
that. The ninety-two
go up, go
percent,
up to what you were saying. No, you right. You right. I was being messy. Okay, stop. No. So what I was gonna say is that I completely fuck with despair being a tool, right? I think what comes up for me is that no, stop making me laugh. What comes up for me is that when we think about like anger and grief, I think that's where I kind of have been working or wondering about when we try to deny that, right? We actually are denying ourselves our full experience of self, right? Our full experience of what it means to be a human in this reality. You should be mad. Like I mentioned earlier around like stuff like the DC, like them bringing in people to LA, like the genocide in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, it's everywhere, right? Like the occupation of fucking Hawaii and Puerto Rico. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, we are always sitting in these realities that are violent and that are harmful and that are recreating systems that are the same and not different and that are harmful and not helpful, right? And I think that we have to get mad. Like we have to be angry. We have to feel those feelings, right? And also what happens when we stop trying to be mad and we pretend so long, we don't even know what real happiness feels like. We don't even know what real joy in our bodies feels like. And if we do feel it, we don't feel safe in it. Like we can't sit and wallow in it. You gotta be on edge, like, oh, some shit about to happen if I'm having a good day. Like we don't want to live like that. Right? That is, we do not want that to be the experience that we have to navigate our entire lives under, right? And if that is true, then we have to feel our feelings. We have to face our reality. And we have to name our truths, right? We have to be like, oh, I'm mad. And you got and like and I hate when people be like, the angry black woman. I be like, but you ain't seen an angry black woman, right? Like you really ain't seen like how bad it could really get based off of the disrespect of this country, right? So I think that yeah, when I hear you say like despair is a tool, I also like to bring up like anger. And I also want to talk about, and this will be the last thing because I can go on and on about these negative, what's perceived as negative emotions, right? Because emotions are neutral, right? Emotion ain't good or bad. It's a neutral thing. But another quote unquote negative emotion that we are trying to push off or ignore is grief. And I think that because we are trying to ignore our grief, because we are trying to disconnect and distance ourselves from our grief, we cannot face our reality. We cannot face what is really happening and what we are really holding and experiencing when it I seen a post on Instagram earlier around. It was like 2026 in 4 months. I still ain't processed